Madam Chair, I move this amendment on behalf of my colleague, the Honourable Member for Calgary-McKay-Nose Hill. Move that Bill 30, an act to protect the health and well-being of working Albertans, be amended in Schedule 1 in Section 39 Sub 1, adding the following after Clause C. C.1. The development of educational materials and strategies explaining the rights of workers under this Act. So, Madam Chair, this amendment is along the same lines thematically as my previous amendments here today. And really what it does is it proposes to ensure that the most vulnerable workers and those that in most need of intervention and improved safety are also among those who actually have the least capacity to find out about and assert their rights under worker legislation. So the Occupational Health and Safety Advisory Council is there to enhance worker safety, and that council, as set up in Bill 30, has the ability to advise the minister on a variety of occupational health and safety matters. It's a good move by the government to create such a council, or to provide it with the mandate that they have through this legislation. Again, I think it's very important that we are very specific and more explicit about what exactly the duties of that council are. We know that the vulnerable and underrepresented workers in this province may lack the time, the language skills, the knowledge, or simple confidence to assert their protections and rights. So a direct and proactive outreach from the Occupational Health and Safety Advisory Council is required to ensure that vulnerable workers are well reached and well protected by this legislation. The amendment on pages 43 and 44 of Bill 30, Section 39.1 of Schedule 1, again, it's a practical action we can take to make this bill work better for the most vulnerable and least integrated workers. We want the Occupational Health and Safety Advisory Council to explicitly focus on outreach and education, especially, and again, explicitly to those workers who would be among the most, who would receive clearly the most benefit from such education and outreach. So I'm certainly not suggesting the ministry or her department or any of the good people in the Occupational Health and Safety group would ignore these workers. I know that they certainly do not. But we want to make sure, and I think it's important both for legislative and practical purposes, but also symbolic purposes, to focus explicitly that the Occupational Health and Safety Advisory Council does, in fact, have an obligation to reach out and educate those workers on these matters. And so I would think that I imagine the minister will tell me that these are things that are intended already through the bill or enabled already through the bill, that in fact her ministry already does. If that's the case, I applaud that. Given that, though, there's no reason not to accept this amendment and no reason not to include it in the bill. One of the lessons I hope this government learned from the shall we say, difficulties of Bill 6 was there were a lot of things implied by what was missing. It allowed a vacuum where people could just simply fill in whatever concerns they had, whether that was in fact what the government intended or not. This I see is actually the reverse of that, where the government will imply or suggest that certain education will happen. No need to actually put it in the bill, but we need the assurance that actually that will happen. So I would encourage the government, please, to support this amendment. It's a good common sense amendment that will proactively truly improve the lives of vulnerable Albertans and marginal workers across our province, which I would hope would be in keeping with both their philosophy and the intent of this bill. And I would encourage all members, both sides of the House, please to support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.